Hey everyone, welcome back to Reality Check. Assassin's Creed 4 is out next week, and while the Stabfield series has changed quite a bit since its inception, there is one major aspect that has endured. That is the science fiction trope of reliving the memories of your ancestors stored inside your DNA. So just how plausible is this? Well, I caught up with Darby McDevitt. He's the lead writer on Assassin's Creed 4. And we had a really great chat, actually, about science and memory. And I started by asking him why they stuck with this idea of reliving memories throughout the whole series.
From almost a poetic or artistic standpoint, the idea of memories is a really beautiful one. By going back into genetic memories, by calling to attention the fact that each one of us is the result of 2 parents and 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and 16 great-great-grandparents. By doing that, by connecting the present with the past, there's a poetic beauty to that.
No argument there, but what about the science? Well, first, a quick refresh. The game's fiction hinges around a device called the Animus, which allows the user to go back in time, essentially, and re-experience the memories of his or her dead ancestors. Now, in this universe, these memories are stored in your DNA up to the point of conception, where that link is then broken. Now, scientifically, this is a bit of a non-starter because DNA does not house our memories. DNA contains all the information needed to, well, in your case, make you. Kind of like a blueprint or a recipe. Memories, on the other hand, though, are stored throughout the brain, and if the brain dies, then the memories are lost as well. Now, even if it was possible to, say, download your personality and memories into a computer, and this is the goal of those seeking digital immortality, by the way, there are some fundamentals of memory that means your descendants wouldn't be able to observe or relive your exact past. You see, when it comes down to it, our memories are unstable, malleable, and ultimately unreliable. Think of memories as being living, evolving things, not static recordings. Now sure, over time memories fade, and we can all attest to this, but that's not the only way they change. Every time we recall something, we reinvent it. Details can be added, memories updated with new information, and 2 or more can even fuse. Plus, memories are always recalled through the distorted lens of our own personal biases. Now, I asked Darby about the fallibility of memory and was really impressed that not only did he know all about this, he'd actually thought at length about how he and the rest of the Ubisoft Montreal team could use this in a future Assassin's Creed.
The memory retrieval is an explicitly flawed process. We haven't really done that before. If you were being really experimental about it, you could have a game that took place, and the entire game was of a specific single hour in history, like maybe a monumental hour in history, like say like the crashing of the Hindenburg or something. And every memory, every mission or every level or every sequence is one person remembering it. Then you go to the next person, they remember it, but it's completely different. They remember it differently. And you could go through a series of 12 people and they could all play the same exact sequence, but the gameplay would be completely different because they all remembered it differently.
Memory fallibility doesn't just stop at changing memories, though. It's actually possible for our brains to remember things that, well, never happened. So-called false memories. Case in point, a 2011 study in the Journal of Consumer Research exposed subjects to commercials for a fictional new popcorn product. The participants were divided into 3 groups. One were exposed to some really vivid advertising, another group had much more subtle ads, and finally a third group actually got to taste the popcorn. 1 week later, all 3 groups were then tested on whether or not they tried and tasted various products, including the popcorn. And they were also asked to specify how confident they were in their memory of doing so. Bizarrely, those who had been exposed to the vivid advertising not only reported remembering tasting the popcorn every bit as much as those who had actually eaten the stuff, but they also reported it with the same level of confidence in that false memory. So why does this happen? Well, in terms of brain pattern activation, there's actually very little difference between imagining a thing and experiencing a thing. And a memory is a memory, regardless of whether you are remembering a real experience or something you imagined, which is a tad disconcerting. So I asked Darby if he'd ever considered using this idea of false memories in a future Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it could be great. It could be, let's rewrite Assassin's Creed 2, for instance. Let's say that Ezio, through great pain and trauma in his childhood, came to believe that Rodrigo Borgia was responsible for his family's death, the death of his father and brothers. So you're actually playing through this game where he believes that this is he needs to get revenge on this guy, when in fact that's not the case, and none of that actually happened, and he's just the product of a deranged mind or something.
So let me know what you think of this week's show. You can do so by leaving me a comment down below in the box, or by tweeting directly at me on Twitter at CamFrazRob. And speaking of comments, basically what I want to do is at the end of each show, I want to discuss a point or a comment or a question raised about the previous episode. One oversimplification I made last week in the episode about whether or not we needed 60 frames per second was mentioned by a few commenters, and it's all to do with film and motion blur. Now, I stated, if you pause a film, the frame you see is almost certainly going to be blurry. This is because when filming, each frame is exposed for a set period of time, and any motion during that period is captured as blur. Now, while that point is true in general, it is possible for filmmakers to create each frame as a crisp image by ramping up the shutter speed and pretty much removing all motion blur. This was used quite famously in the intro to Saving Private Ryan to give it a jittery, action-packed look. So shutter speed is simply the length of time each frame of your video is exposed to light. So the longer the shutter is open, the more motion is captured. Now, games don't have shutter speed as each frame is rendered perfectly, but high shutter speed in film is kind of comparable. Okay, well, thanks for watching as always, everyone, and we'll see you back here next Sunday.